also have had news through that the Iranians have launched a rocket attack on a base in Iraq. We'll show you where that base is now. This is a rocket attack in retaliation for the US assassination of the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, General Qasem Soleimani. So this base is to the west of Baghdad. It's been a base, the Al Asad Air Base, that's been used for quite some time for US troops. Word is that there were tens of rockets fired on that base from Iran. You can see it's a fair way over the border from Iran. No reports of casualties at this stage. We've been told the US President Donald Trump is being briefed and is also informing other senior politicians across the political spectrum of what's going on. We've got our US correspondent David Lipson joining us now. Dave, what can you tell us?
Yeah, well, g'day Joe. The latest is we have a statement now from the Pentagon that confirms at least a dozen missiles have been launched from inside Iran and have actually hit at least two US bases inside Iraq. So I'll read you some of that statement. At approximately 5:30 p.m. EST, that's Eastern Standard Time in the United States, so about almost 2 hours ago, Iran launched more than a dozen ballistic missiles. I'll come back to that point, against US military and coalition forces in Iraq. It's clear that these missiles were launched from Iran and targeted at least two Iraqi military bases holding US military and coalition personnel. Al Asad base is one of them, and Erbil is the other one. Now, the reason that I mentioned ballistic missiles is that that is clearly only within the capability of Iran itself, not just its proxies. So this does seem to indicate a clear escalation in the conflict that has been going tit for tat for several weeks now, much longer, depending on how you look at it. But really, the response from the US is what we're watching very closely on now. And I think that will probably depend largely on the sorts of casualties that we will or won't see inside these bases. So the bases hold not only American soldiers but coalition soldiers as well, so Iraqis, possibly some others, indeed from the United States allied countries. But there is a little bit further on that statement. It goes on to say we're working on initial battle damage assessments, and as we evaluate the situation and our response, we'll take all necessary measures to protect and defend US personnel, partners and allies in the region. So this is a response from Iran that the Pentagon was very much expecting, was very much ready for, and so not unexpected, but certainly a clear escalation in this conflict.
Okay, David. So just take us back a few steps. So we had this news come through several days ago about the assassination of this general, this senior Iranian general. Take us through what happened back then, and that was in Iraq, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It was at Baghdad, or just outside Baghdad airport. Qasem Soleimani, who is or was the top military general in Iran, a very important and powerful figure, not just in Iran, but right throughout the Middle East. He was responsible for coordinating many of Iran's proxies, which have worked against the interests of the United States and Israel in particular, as well as other US allies. So that strike against him was in response to what we'd seen in the days and weeks prior to that, an escalation in tensions. We saw a rocket strike by Iran, or at least its proxies, its Shiite militia proxies against the US embassy in Baghdad, and that resulted in the death of an American contractor. Now, from reporting that we have seen out of the United States in recent days, that attack in particular, followed by pretty violent protests at the US embassy, really infuriated the President Donald Trump. He was watching very closely. He said to reporters on New Year's Eve that he was not going to allow another Benghazi, and that, of course, is in reference to the attack on the US embassy back in 2012, in which the ambassador there, the US ambassador, and 3 other officials were killed. It seems that from that point on, the president was very much on a course to deal a serious blow to Iran. It came as a big shock, not only to Iran, but to the Middle East, and indeed the United States' allies as well. Everyone, it seems, has been scrambling to sort of deal with the repercussions of that strike. And we've seen those enormous protests, those outpourings of grief in Iran and Iraq and elsewhere in the Middle East as to the death of such an important commander. As a result of all of that, that's where this expectation was that Iran was going to retaliate. Iran described the attack on Qasem Soleimani as an act of war, and as such, we have been waiting to see how they would respond. Well, we've seen at least the start of that response. We don't know if it will be the end of it. We also know that Iran has